All right, Monday, May 5th, I'm John, and this is my manifesting journey using the law of assumption. I'm now this is either the 5th or 6th week, and so far I've had massive internal changes. I know I've mentioned them here and there in the first couple of videos, but I decided just to write them down and, kind of list now what has changed. And before I get into them, I just want to reiterate, I didn't 4 or 5 weeks ago, I did not make a to-do list and say, these are the things that I want to change. These are the things that, could be better in my life. I didn't do any of that. All I did was I started falling asleep, assuming the feeling of the person that I want to become, just like I'm that person now, or I was that person then. Like when I started, started falling asleep and imagining that I was in that house that I wanted right then as I was falling asleep. I wasn't thinking of it, I was thinking from it. And Elmer Locker makes that, he just reiterates that over and over and over again to drive it home, because you have to assume the feeling. If you're just thinking of something, then you're thinking of something that you want. Therefore, the subconscious is going to feel that separation, and it's going to know that you don't have it. But the whole reason the law of assumption works is because you're tricking your subconscious mind and telling it that you already have what you want. So it's important to become, it's not just important, it's everything to become that person. Another thing Elmer talks about is ask yourself questions, which I do throughout each day. Is I will just ask, I'm going to give you an example. So last week I was drinking, we had root beer floats. On Friday night, my daughter was having a sleepover. And so my wife had bought a case of root beer, and I love soda, and I love root beer. So the root beer was just sitting in the cabinet. And so I started to have like a root beer every day. And on the third day, I was sitting there drinking the root beer. And as I was drinking the root beer, I was thinking to myself, and I was asking the question, would the person that I want to become, that has millions of dollars and, the physique that I'm imagining, and, just all the things that I want to become, would that person be drinking a root beer at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday? And I was about to take a sip, and I stopped taking the sip, and I went over and dumped the rest of the root beer down the drain. And I haven't had a root beer since. Okay, so when you start asking your questions like that, it becomes very powerful, especially if you can, just consistently ask yourself, like, how would that person feel right now? Like if I did have the millions of dollars in the bank, how would that feel like right now? What would that, financial security feel like? And so I started asking myself those questions, and I've done other techniques, but just to go back to what I was talking about, was all of these changes that I'm going to go over right now, all these internal changes that have taken place over the last 4 or 5 weeks, did so, and they started to happen a day or two after I started falling asleep. in that feeling state. Okay, so so here's a list. So we moved into this house probably a year and a half. It's almost been a year and a half since we lived here, and probably 6 months previous to that, we were living in our old home, and for whatever reason, I just stopped working out consistently. As I said, I used to be, and I still do train a little bit, but I used to be like a full-time personal trainer. And I'm not sure what happened, but I just stopped working out consistently. And since we moved in to this house a year and a half ago, I've been repeatedly telling myself, let's go. Next week we gotta start working out. Let's get going again. And I would work out 2 or 3 times, fall off for a week or two. And then I would work out 2 or 3 times, fall off for a week or two. And I just kept trying. I knew I wanted to do it, but I couldn't motivate myself to be consistent. So with that being said, one of the first things that started to happen was I started exercising consistently. This is something I've been trying to motivate myself to do for almost 2 years. And I just started doing it naturally, and it wasn't on my to-do list. It was in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do, but I didn't start practicing the law of assumption and make a to-do list and say, this is one of the first things I want to do. I just started doing it naturally, and I haven't missed over the last like 4 or 5 weeks. Okay, a couple days after I started listening, I was like, you know what? I feel like working out today. And then it's been like almost now I gradually worked myself into it, but I've been consistent. And now I'm pretty much working out like every single day. And leg day would be a day that I would always skip. I would do the first 2 days chest, and then I just did legs today, and it's 3:00 in the afternoon. I would never do legs that early, okay, in the day. I'd be putting it off, and it wouldn't happen. And I would probably, I would follow through on leg day maybe once every couple months, okay? So that's the first thing. These are in no order, okay? But as soon as I wake up, I wash my face off and stuff. I come out of the restroom and I make the bed and I open the windows. Okay. Sometimes the bed would sit there unmade since I work from home. It would sit there unmade until noon, or maybe even later. Sometimes I would do it, but I would definitely not do it first thing. All right, the blinds or the shades that I pull up and let the sunlight in, I do that as soon as I make the bed. These shades, they would not open for weeks unless my wife was home on the weekend, and then she would open them. So there's something else, and it just automatically happened. Wasn't on my list. I just started doing it. Okay. Speaking of a to-do list, I just started creating a to-do list. And then after I created the to-do list, and these are the kinds of things that are happening, like I'm finding like when I begin doing something, it's almost like the next day or that day, like later on in the day, I will watch a video or I'll be attracted or inspired to watch some video that reinforces what I just started doing. Like as soon as I started making a to-do list, David has, I think, thousands of videos. And as I said, I go through them, and I'm through about 10 months, as I said. But so I watched like 50 or 60 of his videos, or not that many. It was probably like 10 or 20 videos. And as soon as I created a to-do list, that day, I watched his very next video was about to-do lists and being non-negotiable. So it's like, I already had the to-do list, and then he's like, okay, here's what to do with the to-do list. Okay, so that was wild. I started cleaning our car. I have never cleaned a car in my life. All of the cars I've had, I've never washed a car. And I started going out, like just doing little things. Like I would vacuum the car one day, the next day I would wipe down the windows, the next day I would clean the dashboard. But I've made it like, and these are things, again, I'm not putting them on my list because I feel like I need to do them. I'm putting them on my list because I want to do them. And the subconscious is changing my perception to make me see these things differently as something that is maybe fun, because the feeling that I get after I do these things is so refreshing. Now when I get in the car, I look around and I feel accomplished. I'm like, oh, look at the dashboard. That was so dusty before, but now it's clean. My physical appearance, shaving. I would go probably sometimes a week or two without shaving my face. Now I shave, every other day. Probably not, I don't go more than 2 days without shaving. Sometimes I like a little scruff on there if I'm feeling, but I could see that changing. My head, I would shave my head maybe once every 2 weeks. Now I shave it every couple of days. So when I talk about like what's changing, and there hasn't been, a ton of huge physical manifestations in the simulation, okay, in the 3D reality, but there has been so many, and this is just some, okay? There's been so many other things. Like I'm more present, I'm listening. Like when people are talking to me about stuff, I can focus on what they're saying, and I'm more involved in the conversation. And the list could go on and on and on, but these are just some of the major things. And so it seems to me what's happening is I'm becoming the person that I want to become. My subconscious is kind of moving. Well, it definitely is. Your subconscious controls 95% of what you do. So my subconscious is moving me into that direction, and it's molding me into the person who has all those things. So that happens first, and I clean up my internal world and myself and my appearance and the way I'm thinking, and then I know it. I know all the physical stuff, and the tangible manifestations are coming next, because it just makes too much sense. Okay. And then there was just one more thing that happened yesterday. I believe this is my 4th video. This is day 4. So it's the 4th video, and yesterday, and I had made, previously I had made videos about sports betting and motivation and some of the mind, but it was mostly sports betting and like motivation. And I did that on and off for a while. I since deleted a lot of those videos. I left it, I think, a couple from last year. But anyway, the whole time I was doing that, I did not receive an email from anybody asking me or telling me that they could improve my YouTube channel. Okay, so, but yesterday I got an email. It was a personal email from somebody, and somebody else might look at this differently, but I know exactly what it is. Okay, this is just the next step. All right, but somebody just out of the blue just sent me an email, said, watched your video and I love your video and I can help you. Basically, I can help you improve your channel. And so, you know, me and him are talking right now, and you know, we'll see how that all plays out. But so somebody would look at that and say, well, it's, you know, he didn't win the lottery, right? So what? But just these kinds of things are happening, and it's almost like a step by step, like I was saying yesterday or the day before. It's like I can tell like how this is building upon itself, because you're not just magically gonna wake up and, you know, go from being in depression and thoughts of, you know, leaving the world where I was 5 weeks ago, and then just magically be the person who has millions of dollars. Okay, it's a gradual climb, I guess, or it's a gradual journey. I like the word journey. So so that's it. I just wanted to fill you in on the changes that I've had so far. Also, my voice, I think might be, I don't know, my voice is normally not as raspy. I'm noticing that when I play back the videos, it's like a little raspy, and it almost comes across as like nervousness, but I'm not sure, but hopefully it changes back soon to my normal voice. I think it's the pollen. It has something to do with the pollen. But anyway, that's it for today, and I love you all, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.